What if the key to feeling calmer, more in control, and genuinely happier wasn't in getting more, but simply in knowing what you actually want just for yourself?
Welcome to What Could Go Right, a podcast about living boldly on and off the water. I'm Eric Orton,
I'm Emily Orton.
and in 2014, we bootstrapped a year on a fixer-upper sailboat with our 5 kids. We wrote a book about it called Seven at Sea, and that book became a New York Times top 10 travel book.
On this podcast, we explore adventure, connection, and stepping into a more intentional life. And we don't just talk about it, we practice it. We invite you to join us on playful, guided sailing trips around the world.
And if you stick around to the end of this episode, you'll hear our sailing update where we share where we're going, when, and which trips still have space. And you can hear our sailing takeaway where you'll hear from somebody who's actually come on a sailing trip with us already.
Let's dive in. Welcome back to the show. Today, we're going to be discussing this really simple but powerful practice from our Navigator framework, which we call Choose Your Own Island. And it's all about creating clarity around your own desires, what brings you joy, ease, energy, and using this as a foundation for your life and for your relationships. I was recently inspired by Laura Doyle's book, The Empowered Wife. It's a New York Times bestseller, and she is suggesting this daily practice of writing down what you want for yourself. And we're not talking about grand world-changing goals, but just small things that delight you, reduce stress, and help you show up more fully, more present. So today, let's explore why this matters and how to start, and what it can look like in everyday life. And of course, if you stick around to the end, there will be a challenge.
A challenge.
A challenge.
All right. Now, I want to stick around
A
to the end.
challenge, like a practice, an idea that
I don't even know what it's going to be,
can
so
make your life better.
I'm gonna stick around, find out.
Something fun. So anyway, just for starters, talking about choose your own island, we talk about that phrase. Can you maybe like flesh out what that means and why each word is so important in that?
For those that may be reasonably new here, choose your own island is the first step in a framework that Emily and I teach, whether through coaching or keynoting, things like that. And it's a framework that we developed ourselves based on what we learned living on a sailboat. And choose your own island really means picking your destination. And first of all, you have to choose it. Nobody can choose it for you. And you have to choose it. It can't be out of a sense of obligation necessarily, or duty or guilt. Because a lot of times we select something that we want to do, or we default to something that we are going to do, but we're not actually choosing it. I guess we are, but anyway, the idea is to be proactive and to be asserting your own will a little bit.
Not what someone else thought would be useful or valuable or a good fit for you.
Yeah. And so choose your own island. And the island is obviously a metaphor. It can be a destination if you literally want to go to Fiji, or if you want to go to Madagascar, it can be an island. But many times the island can be anything that you're seeking to become, to accomplish, to do, to be. And choose your own island. It's also the idea of ownership. It has to be something that you take responsibility for. You're not relying on somebody else to make it happen for you, or you're not waiting for somebody else to deliver you the circumstances that are going to allow it to come together. There's ownership, there's agency, and there's
A desire.
just the idea that it needs to emanate from you, and you have to take ownership and responsibility.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
That's okay.
Came in the middle of your thought.
Did I cover it?
Yeah, I think that's really great. And I know, for an example, in 2014, we moved aboard a fixer-upper sailboat with our 5 kids. And that idea did not originate with me. But as we talked about it together, it was an island that Eric was choosing. And the more we talked about it and the more I saw the benefits that could be there for us, then I was choosing it too. And then we ended up choosing it together. And we had, I think our top 3 priorities were probably the same, but in different order. And that's fine. We were aligned, and that was something that really motivated us and excited us and kept us moving forward for a long time. And it has then since become just like a foundation for our life from that point forward. So it could turn into something really grand, but if you don't even know what you want, there's like a pretty slim chance you're ever going to get there. And I want to share a couple of things from Laura Doyle's book. It's in her chapter 4. She says, the more you know what you want, the better. And I think that is totally true. I absolutely agree with that. Maybe we'll use the same title for this podcast. But she has a quote from Lucille Ball, if you know her from I Love Lucy. And she said, "It's a hell of a start being able to recognize what makes you happy." And I think that's just a really important place to begin figuring out who you are and what you want and what kind of life you want to have and where you want to put your energy and what relationships you want to feed and then how you're going to spend your day to day. She tells the story of this one woman who couldn't figure out how to say what it was that she wanted without making it a demand or an expectation and starting a fight. But shoving aside your own desires isn't a good strategy because they often end up just exploding later. So, this whole idea is about getting to know yourself, taking some time for yourself to figure out what it is you actually are interested in, what lights you up. So, I guess maybe we can talk about a time when knowing what you wanted or not knowing made a big difference in how things turned out. Was there a time when you were like, I really know exactly what I want and go for it? Oh, sorry.
I, as you've been
Are you,
talking, it reminded me of this quote that I love
oh,
by Louis
what you
Stevenson.
really want is to share this quote from
Robert Louis Stevenson. He's the author of
like Peter Pan? No,
no
no,
one.
no, no. He did like Treasure Island,
I should know this because it was boat related. You'll look that up. To know,
Swiss Family Robinson. I don't
you'll
know.
figure that out.
I'll find out.
Robert Louis Stevenson says, "To know what you prefer instead of humbly saying amen to what the world tells you you ought to prefer is to have kept your soul alive." And I just think that it's actually really emotionally hard, it can be, to say what you want, because so often we're actually saying what we think we want based on other people's influence on us. I want to go to college because my parents and everybody else have told me that that's what I should want. So I want that. Or I want to go to a beach resort vacation because that's what I'm supposed to want, right? Like that's the epitome of relaxation. When in fact, us as individuals, we might prefer something completely different than what people are sort of sending our way. And not to be obstinate, not to be rebellious for rebellious sake, but just to be very clear that we can prefer what we want. And oftentimes I think it's very hard for us to say it because we feel like it's gonna come across as selfish or impossible or inconsiderate perhaps. And so maybe we can talk about some of those things today. But to know what you prefer instead of humbly saying amen to what the world tells you you ought to prefer is to have kept your soul alive. Robert Louis Stevenson.
And he was famously wrote Treasure Island
Treasure Island. I was
and
just there.
also Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So that is other stories too. But
Fast
yeah,
fact, Norman Island in the Virgin Islands is
is
the storied treasure island referred to in the book. Anyway.
yes, we've hiked Treasure Island
Yeah.
multiple times.
Still come up empty, but
Haven't found well, there's some treasures there, but not ones you can carry away.
they're
Just
emotional
like
treasures.
you could take pictures of like the incredible views and
Yeah, true that.
things that you find there. So yeah, I just think you're right. It is an act of kind of staking a claim for yourself to be clear about what it is that you actually want. Sometimes you get a little hint from recognizing what you don't want.
Mhm.
Like you might feel resentment, and that's a little red flag. Like something about this is not what I want. Or you might feel put out. Yeah, I think resentment is a really good flag to start recognizing this is not what I want. And then you could say, why am I feeling resentful about this? What is it that I actually want? And then you're starting to get into the treasure island of what you actually want. So I'm trying to think. I feel like Eric is really good at figuring out what it is that he wants and then making plans to like work backwards and break complex big ideas into small simple steps that you can move towards what you want.
Before I brought up this quote, you asked me a question, which
Oh,
was,
yeah, I just said, can you share a time when knowing what you wanted or it made a difference in how you handled a decision going forward? You'll decide the context, whether it was something really concrete or a little more abstract.
God, I feel like I have so many examples. I have to like figure out which to choose from.
Mm.
Which do you think would be most helpful? Like what area?
Well, maybe start with something small because it's very relatable.
This is our car. keeps
Mhm.
breaking down. And we've spent, we've got this, we bought it secondhand, my parents, and it's been a great car. We keep having issues with it and it's fine. We keep getting it repaired so that it will stay on the road.
Keep going. It's a great car, but it keeps breaking down.
Well, here,
We
here,
all fit.
here's what I'm trying to, and I don't know if this is answering your question or not, but you asked the mechanic, hey, we might want to just get a new car. What models do you recommend? And he recommended Toyota. We had a lineup of Toyota Siennas in our past. Okay, let's go look at Toyotas. So I'm window shopping on my phone for Toyotas, and I'm looking at the car payments. And right now we don't have a car payment because we've paid for it. And I just thought, you know what? I actually don't mind paying for the occasional repair because then I don't have 10 years or 5 years of every month having to pay this amount. And I don't know. It just sort of put it in context for me. I was like, you know what? I actually prefer an old beat up used car that I have to repair, even if it's more frequently than I want. For me, it's better than buying a newer car and having years and years of monthly payments every month.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So you kind of backed into that preference once you gathered some information. You were
Yeah.
like, I think I want a new car. And then you changed your mind.
Yeah. I was like, I think I want a new car or, like a replacement. And then I did some homework and I was like, you know what? I'm actually all right.
Okay, I have another story. Like, thank you for that one. That is very relatable. I hear people all the time talking about their cars, and there is this idea like, if only I got a new car, then I would never have any troubles with my car,
If only we had a Toyota, then we would never have troubles.
right? So I heard this story from a friend recently, and she was in this practice of being clear about what she wants, and she had gone out to lunch with a friend. She placed her order. She had checked the whole menu. She knew exactly what she wanted. She ordered what she wanted. She said, hey, I want this, but not that. And great, great, great. The meal comes out and it is not what she ordered. It is not with the adjustments that they talked about to the menu. And she said, normally I see myself as someone who's easygoing and I don't complain and I roll with things. So, like, based on that identity, she would often not get what she wants and then be fine with it, act like she was fine with it. And she, to her, did something that was out of character and took a little bravery. And she looked at the meal and called the waitress back and said, this is different than what I ordered. And they took it back to the kitchen, made it right, and brought what she actually ordered. And it was like a step forward to her to say, I decided what I wanted. We talked about what I wanted. I paid for what I wanted. And then they brought something that is not what I want. And so I spoke up for myself and advocated to get
Mm.
what I wanted, at each of those points before that. Somehow when she got in the kitchen, crazy, and the order got mixed up and the adjustments she needed didn't happen. And even something as simple as that. And I thought, wow, I'm so convicted because I just did this. We just went out to lunch with our daughter, Lily, and we ordered something specific and it did not come back. And we just ate what we got. And I was like, you know what? It made me think of that moment. Like, I did not honor myself what we wanted. I didn't honor what it was that Lily wanted. I didn't get the special need that she had. And we just kind of went with it so that we didn't ruffle any feathers. And that wasn't necessarily the best approach. Maybe sometimes it can be and you decide that, but I was just impressed by her story and thought, here I am, like, we'll talk about, oh, we did this huge thing, we did this huge thing. But then something small comes along and I don't always have the nerve to say, I'm sorry, this was meant to be gluten free, or something like that. I was like, okay, thanks.
Well, now I'm curious which friend you're talking about. You don't have to say it on
Yeah.
the recording, but we can talk about that later. And also, I guess I have a question for you because I relate to that person that wants to be agreeable,
Mm-hmm.
amenable, easygoing. And there's a virtue to that, I think, to roll with it and say, it's fine. And then I also know that something that you often bring up, which I think is a very valid point, which is sort of this tug between selfishness and selflessness. And I think most of us feel like being selfless is a desirable attribute and being willing to sacrifice is very noble.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the archetype that we study in literature in the hero story. The hero that's willing to sacrifice himself for the good of others is the most noble. So
Mm-hmm.
how do we recognize this, reconcile the nobility and goodness of being a self-sacrificing individual and wanting and that might be a little bit cosmic. I'm not trying to make it so big, but saying, actually, I ordered what I ordered and I want it. And I'm also a selfless giving person.
Well, I think it's a really interesting question, and I love that word sacrifice, and I think it might get a little semantic, but in my opinion, when we make trade-offs like that, like in this savior archetype that you're talking about, the thing that he was trading, like in the case of Jesus, what he was trading for was worth more to him than what he was giving up. He cared more about being the savior and helping everybody than about his temporary suffering. And so, yes,
He's actually getting what he wants.
he offered a lot, but he's trading up for something he wants more. And so that might be a way to know that. And that might actually even help in these very small situations where you might say, look, I have a very generous nature. I want to be agreeable. I perceive that this waitress is having a tough day, or, you know, I don't want to add any trouble to her. And so I'm going to choose to just go ahead and eat what I got. And I'm now trading in like this feel good about my personal identity. And I'm not moving forward with resentment that once again I ate a meal that I didn't order. I think that resentment continues to be a key. If you don't feel resentful, then that's probably a good trade-off, like an intentional trade-off. And if you do feel resentful, if you're like, I can't believe this happened again. I can't believe, this is not what I ordered. I'm just stuck with this. That's probably not going to be coming from that place of, I'm just an agreeable person. That's more of like a victim mentality where you're not coming at it like with intentionality and generosity. You're coming at it from like this trapped, stuck position. That's my initial thought on that. Do you have any? Because I know you're very much of like, hey, forget sacrifice. Like you got to do what's best for you.
Well,
we kind of lean.
we're a good yin and yang.
Yeah, we meet in the middle, but we each lean like a little bit the opposite direction.
Well, every Marvel movie, the hero will, Spider-Man will give himself up or over to save the world.
Mm-hmm.
That's the archetype.
Yeah,
The hero, Wonder Woman does it, everyone does it.
that's basically why they're called the hero, right?
Yeah. Um, and so it's interesting because I regularly talk with people who are interested in coming on sailing trips, and there's a lot of people find them in the situation of, oh, I've been taking care of other people for so long, it's now time to do something for me. So I want to go sailing. I've taken care of my sick parents, or I raised my niece and nephew, or I've, whatever it is, I've sacrificed all this time. Now I want to do something that's, for me.
And they may not even be coming at it as a victim. They might be like, I've been so grateful that I've been able to care for this loved one. And now that they've passed, I'm going to turn my attention to myself.
Yeah. And it can be, and I think that there are times and seasons that you say, this is and I think the example that you and I have talked about a lot is our friend Dave. And Dave and his wife, she was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And they had lots of visions and plans of adventure and travel and all these sorts of things. And they had a daughter, and they decided that more than going off and doing these adventurous travels that they wanted to do, they wanted to give her as much of a chance, Wendy, the wife, as much of a chance as possible to live as long as possible while they were still raising their daughter. And so what mattered to them shifted.
Yeah, cancer was their adventure.
Yeah. And so they, and I don't think they did it begrudgingly, like, oh man, life is ripping us off. They just said, this is what it is. And we're going to do what we value the most, which is being around as parents, as two parents for as long as possible, and extending life as long as possible, and making those efforts. So that can shift.
Yeah, I know that is part of why we call our framework a navigator framework, because you don't have control over all the pieces, but you're going to make decisions as the information comes toward you. And I think that's a great story. They didn't say like, oh, we're so sorry we didn't do that surf trip to wherever. They're like, that would have been fun, but we're happier that we got an extra 5 years then.
But we did some treatments, and that lengthened life, and yeah.
So one of these things that Laura Doyle talks about is she claims that your desires, or that word can often have a sensual connotation, and that is not what I mean at all here. But those things that you want, those things that delight you and that bring you life are sacred marching orders. And she says, when I talk about honoring my desires, I don't necessarily mean that I always make them happen, although I do frequently get what I want. Honoring my desires simply means I acknowledge them. Right? I acknowledge them even if they seem impossible or impractical, or that having them would make me lose something else that I love. I admit what my desires are. I tell them to other people. She writes them down on this list that I mentioned earlier. And no matter how outlandish they are, this is like we do something similar in our practices. We have a practice called the blue sky questions where we want people to write this down. And she said, I just want to share with you what some of the benefits of writing down what you want, no matter how outlandish, just being aware of it, not necessarily saying this will happen. Just entertaining the idea of these things is fun. And it puts me in a good mood rather than just dismissing them. Once you've written them down, then I can head toward my desire, trusting that it's leading me in an exciting and gratifying direction. Knowing what I want makes me feel more passionate, and the world responds to passion and often rearranges so I get what I want. Some of my desires are pretty humble and easy to fill once I know what they are. And I think one of the things that really stood out to me is I went ahead and started making a list of like, this is stuff I want. And I wasn't talking about world peace, although I'm also a fan of that. But I wrote one of the things that I wanted was a hula hoop because I used to have one. I loved using it. It's not something everybody wants. It's certainly not something anybody has told me you should want this, for your life. But I had one and it was delightful. And I didn't want to become a pro. I didn't want to learn a lot of tricks. I just like using the hula hoop.
Can you go pro with the hula hoop?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Well, you know what I mean? It could be like a Cirque du Soleil and there's different
Oh,
sizes and you do tricks and there's like it's a
true.
whole world. You can watch videos and about
Wow.
what size and what thickness and how you're gonna do it. Are you gonna do this trick and are you gonna meet up? And there's like it's a world. And I
Yeah.
don't want to be part of the whole world. I just want my own hula hoop for my living room while I'm watching TV or my backyard or when I'm out, it's easy to pack when you're going on a camping trip or something. It just slides right in the side of the car and takes up almost no space whatsoever, but it's fun. I think it's fun for myself. And I scrolled to a few pages and this author was giving an example of what was on her what I want list. And the top of her list was also a hula hoop. And I was like, okay, I'm getting the message. It can be like, if you even know what are those little things that delight you, whether it's, I want this specific hamburger, hold the mayo, or I want, a hula hoop, or I want, a stronger volleyball serve, or want something really huge. Maybe you could come up with some of the bigger ones.
Well, actually, the thing that's coming to my mind is this example that you shared when you were telling me about this and how they were going to sell their house. Like she wanted a house
In California.
on the beach or near the
Mhm.
beach and they were getting it. Awesome. But then they're getting ready to move and she's sad.
Yeah.
Will you share it?
Oh, yeah. So then it came time to actually move into her dream home, but the home they currently lived in had like these beautiful purple hydrangea blooming everywhere. And she was feeling also kind of sad. And so she's like, it's okay if your desires are in conflict. She told her husband, oh, now I don't want to move. And he's like, hey, we can back out. There's these like steps we can take. We don't have to do this. And she was like, "No, but I do." And he was like, "Oh, okay. You're just having some conflicting desires, but this is overriding. You actually do want to live in a house by the beach. Maybe we can plant some hydrangea there." And when you move into towards something new, it does mean you're giving up something else. Like, for me, I would, it will take some time for me to hula hoop. I'll have to not do something else while I'm
It's
doing
true.
that.
And I guess I love this idea that you can want things that are contradictory,
Mm.
especially on paper.
But yeah, and
Just like write it down. And if it doesn't make sense, that's okay.
yeah, it doesn't have to make sense.
And to say, I want to live in the mountains and I want to live by the water
Yeah.
and I want to live on you can't. And then
It's feeling kind of personal.
I'm just saying that I'm just saying like, you can't have all three at the same time. It's an impossibility, but you
Mhm.
can still have those desires of like, oh, I think it'd be great to live in the desert. I think it'd be great to live in the jungle. I'd love to live in the city. I'd love to live in the country. So I guess I experienced that a lot of
Yeah.
wanting to be in all the places at once. And that's impossible. And I guess what you're saying is it's okay. at the end of the day, you're gonna have to make some choices and some trade-offs, but you can always write it down and have fun with the idea. I love this idea that writing down what you want, how it makes you feel,
Yeah,
which I think is a huge benefit.
yes, you acknowledge what you want, you're honoring it down, maybe sharing it with friends or loved ones, holding it lightly that maybe some of the things that you want conflict with each other or that they change. And I actually have, like, I think, a really happy ending story where it all came together. We had a neighbor who loved science and also loved theater. And as he progressed
Mm,
up through the different grade levels, at every juncture, people were telling him, you're going to have to pick one. You can't be like science and theater. You're going to have to pick theater or science. And he just kept resisting that notion and was kind of like, we'll see. And he kept his notebook. He was a great one for always writing down all of his ideas in notebooks and sketching it out and writing the words. And he just has many, many of these notebooks. And he just kind of kept he knew what he wanted and he kept doing the things that made him feel happy and like engaged his interest and were things that he loved. And he eventually found a place in life where they intersected, and not just for a hobby, but for a livelihood,
a
a
profession.
profession. And he brought science and theater together and he would do like, how would you even describe what he does?
Well, he's a puppet maker,
Yeah.
and so there's a blend of storytelling and art
Yes.
and technology
There's like,
and
yeah, electrical
and
lighting and robotic moving parts and
and there's what's the textiles, like the fabrics.
mhm.
And so yeah, this is our neighbor in New York City, and he formed an organization, a company called the Puppet Kitchen, and would make puppets for television shows, for live events, for
Mm,
parades.
for
and
Broadway shows.
and yeah, there's a lot of technology, and that's like doing special effects for movies.
Yeah.
You have to use science and technology to in a lot of the storytelling, but you're also working in the world of art. Sometimes you're making up stuff that's fantastical. It's not
Mhm.
based in reality, but you still have to know science to do it. And so, as you're saying that, it made me realize that the people that tell us that you have to make a choice, you have to choose one or the other, that's based on what they know, and they don't know everything.
Yeah,
They
especially
think they do, and we can think that they do, and we might trust them and listen to them. But I think if we're loyal and trusting and faithful in our interests and our desires, we can discover something that maybe they don't know and we don't know, and we'll discover a new way, a new path that nobody realized before, and off we go.
I love that. I think this is a great place to bring it to an end. And here is the challenge, or perhaps better phrase, as an invitation.
Can I read this quote since I pulled it out before?
Okay, hold on
Sorry.
the invitation.
Because I think this has to do with us getting what we want. This is from Dr. David Hawkins, the cosmologist, scientist guy. The
There's a
unco-
lot of science in this episode.
yeah, are we sciencey?
If we want, we
We should
can.
start wearing
We are interested
we
in
should start
science a
wearing
little
lab
bit.
coats and that's like a stethoscope. All right. The unconscious will allow us to have only what we believe we deserve. If we have a small view of ourselves, then what we deserve is poverty, and our unconscious will see to it that we have that actuality. So we have to believe that we are deserving or worthy of something for it to actually come into existence. I think that's what he's saying.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and knowing what you want is, you could start in either place, but knowing what you want and honoring it and acknowledging that, I think will grow your sense of worthiness because you get strengthened in like, I'm
You
gonna
just
figure out I deserve a hula hoop. I'm gonna go get the piping and the connectors and make a hula hoop for myself, my dream hula hoop.
yeah, baby.
It might come into your mind how to actually bring those things about, but just honoring that about yourself that you want it is a really great place to stir up a little more life and awareness and in yourself. So here's a simple invitation for this week. It's to start a list of things you want just for yourself. Don't worry about whether you can get them. Don't worry about whether anybody else will approve. Just notice and write and play. It's a small daily practice, but it can start to reveal your own island and maybe make your everyday just a little calmer and a little more joyful. And I know when I first started, I was like, oh, I'm going to have to order notebooks off Amazon first and then I can start. I was like, no, just make a note in your smartphone, text yourself, but it doesn't have to be hard, but it can be really lovely. A little playful place to land each day.
You want to know what I wonder? I wonder what could go right. Before we wrap up, I just want to share the sailing update in case you're interested in coming sailing with us. We have a fun plot twist. We are actually looking to open up a last-minute trip to Bora Bora. That's in French Polynesia, down by Tahiti. We'll actually start in an island called Raiatea, which is just next to Tahiti, and then we'll sail one way over to Bora Bora. So we'll be flying home out of Bora Bora. That is going to be May 2nd through the 9th. So if you're interested, we do have to make sure that it's a full boat for that trip to come together. And there's a few people that have already expressed interest. But if you want to go to Bora Bora soon, May 2nd through 9th, down in French Polynesia. Then June, July, August are all sold out with our Mediterranean trips. We do have space on our September Norway trip, September 3rd through the 9th. We have room for up to 4 people, 2 cabins. So if you want to join us in Norway, we're going to be sailing the beautiful Lofoten Islands. I am personally super excited about that. And then our September Italy trip is sold out, but Mexico in October, 5 through 10, we have a spot for 1 solo female traveler, Mexico 5 through 10 in October. And then in the Bahamas, 9 through the 14th, we have room for 1 solo female traveler. Otherwise, those trips are also sold out. In December, 7 through the 12th, we're going back to the Virgin Islands, and we have room for up to 5 people, 2 cabins and 1 solo male traveler. That's December of this year. And we're starting to piece together our 2027. And what we know so far is that in March 1st through the 6th, we're going to be back in the Bahamas. And so we have more cabins and space available if you want to hit us up for the Bahamas next year, March of 2027. And that is the sailing update.
We can talk about trips all day, but it's more fun to hear from someone who's been aboard. Here is a recent guest takeaway.
One thing I'll take away is that I can do things. I think that's another thing I hold back because I have a fear of what will it be? I won't make it. I won't do it. But here we are. We did it. This is like, I was crying up here earlier and Joel's like, why are you crying? I'm like, just having a moment. It's amazing. And if anyone's thinking of doing it, do it 100%. Like,
whoa. Sorry. You're good. I just saw the boom going over. Yeah, I did too.
I would say do it. If you're thinking about it, do it. Jump.